welcome to Biointegrative's lecture series. We've been doing a lot of these lately, and today we're going to be talking about nutrition for optimal health. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jen Boscovich. I am now our APH at the office. I'm an RN, a holistic nutritionist, Reiki practitioner, and energy worker healer. And I'm going to give you a little bit about my background with health and kind of what my journey has looked like and how I've gone down this road and so many rabbit holes of nutrition. So once upon a time, I was actually a professional athlete. So I had lots of different coaches, and I even had a nutritionist telling me exactly what meals and stuff I was supposed to be eating. And I was a young nurse at the time, and there was really just something off or not quite right with the advice these coaches were giving me. And so I knew enough to know that what they were suggesting to me wasn't healthy, wasn't totally right, but I didn't know really what to be doing. So that's what started my journey into becoming a holistic nutritionist. Was shortly after I got my nursing degree. And then shortly after my second son was born, I had some major health problems. By the age of 34, I was diagnosed with a rare genetic disease. I've had multiple stomach surgeries. I have a really hard time digesting food. And so Western medicine really, we exhausted all efforts, and their solutions were really just to cut more. They wanted to, or still kind of want to, remove my entire colon and have me in a bag. Well, using food as medicine has really made a huge difference in my health overall. And I've actually become a lot healthier, and I've avoided having that surgery. So I understand the ups and downs of health and all the crazy things you learn and all the conflicting information. I think sometimes, especially with nutrition, it's kind of tricky. It's the more you know, the more confused you become. And I will tell you, nutritionists, physicians, so many people feel that way. It's very overwhelming. And so today, really the point of today's lecture is I'm going to give you some of the key things that will really impact and affect your overall health with the food choices you're making and what you're eating. I'm going to give you a lot of whys. I'm that person. I need to know why. If you're going to tell me that I need to eat bananas instead of apples, I'll do it if I understand why and I agree with you. So that's how I'm going to approach today's lecture. We do have a lot of information to get through. So I will apologize ahead of time if I go a little too fast. Because of the way, because of the Zoom setup, I'm going to ask that all of you guys, if you have questions, you can plug them in as we go into the Q&A part of Zoom. I won't be able to see those. Those aren't going to pop up on my screen because I'm in a full screen share with you. Those won't pop up until the end. So I'll start at the beginning, and we'll go through the whole Q&A with you guys at the end. So I just wanted to kind of give you some direction on where we'll get started. So food should be our medicine, and our medicine should be our food. Hippocrates is known as the father of medicine. He was an ancient Greek physician, and in the year 300 BCE, he understood this, which baffles some of us that, we're here in the year 2020 and still we have a worse food system than we've ever had in human history. I love Minions. So dieting is easy. It's like riding a bike, except the bike is on fire and you're on fire and everything's on fire because you're in hell. So I love this because I actually am completely 100% anti-dieting. I don't believe in dieting at all. And what I'm going to be teaching you guys today is not dieting. It really is lifestyle change. It's eating having a new way of eating. Sometimes it takes a little while. We'll talk about that and kind of troubleshooting some things. But the reason I wanted to really plug this in right at the beginning is you're going to hear me talking a lot today about fat loss, because losing body fat is where we store a lot of the toxins, garbage, the things that disrupt our hormones and just create havoc in our bodies. A lot of that is stored in our fat cells. And so when I'm referring to fat loss, I just want you guys to keep in mind, I'm not talking a diet. The things that I'm suggesting are not for 3 months and fit into your summer bikini and look great for Aunt Susie's wedding. And then we fall back off and eat cupcakes. So improving health through fat loss on that note. So let's get started with what overweight versus overfat means. So you can see, you can look in a room, in just our IV room, you see all sorts of different body sizes and shapes. Everybody's really made different. And the key to this, there's all sorts of fancy equations to figure out if someone's overweight. And really, bodybuilders textbook are obese, a lot of them actually, but they don't have all the extra fat and toxins bogging down their body, and a lot of their systems, when they're that lean, are running pretty optimally. So that's one thing just to consider. So we're talking about not necessarily at all your weight on the scale. It's just about how much body fat are we carrying around with us. So some of the things, being over fat, it can make you more likely to have conditions such as heart disease and stroke, high blood pressure, diabetes, cancer, gallbladder disease, gallstones, osteoarthritis, gout, breathing problems, sleep apnea, and asthma. Everyone knows that being over fat can cause a lot of problems for us. There's nutrient deficiencies. There are about 10% of the United States is actually nutrient deficient. And calcium, magnesium, iron, omega-3s, folate, potassium, all of these, potassium, vitamin A, E, D, copper, these are all of our main deficiencies. And I think that that's something important that people really don't always wrap their head around, as they see these morbidly obese people eating tons of food and they're actually nutrient deficient. There's lots of reasons for that, but most of it's the food choices they're eating. And then toxins. The majority of our toxins are fat soluble, which means that even the toxins we pick up in the environment just by living in a city around people, it gets stored. They're fat soluble, so they're stored in our fat cells, which can make you more toxic. I love Hippocrates. This is another quote from him. If someone wishes for good health, one must first ask oneself if he is ready to do away with the reasons for his illness. Only then is it possible to help him. And that's so true. It's a really important question to ask yourself. You're going to get a lot of overwhelming information today. And truly, it's, the road to optimal health sometimes is a long road. It can be a journey for a lot of us. But I think that knowledge is power, and we can get there. And I don't think anybody needs to make all of these changes at once, but they really are going to be important and beneficial to helping you reach and maintain optimal health. So let's talk about some of the toxins first. Arsenic. It's identified as a carcinogenic chemical by the EPA. It's linked to cardiovascular disease, cancer, abnormal fetal development. Even though the government knows this, most of the water in the United States is contaminated with high levels of arsenic that in most areas surpass the legal limit that's even allowed. So that's one thing, is really to look at the water source of the water you're drinking. We're going to talk a lot about water today, so that's definitely one thing to consider. pesticides used on crops to rid vegetation of insects and pests. Pesticides are extremely toxic to us. Just a few, a DDT, so dangerous. Actually, it was banned from the entire United States in 1970s because it was so dangerous. And last year, 80% of conventional spinach was contaminated with DDT. So DDT is back. It is completely illegal and very dangerous. And then Monsanto's Roundup. A lot of people have heard all the controversy with Roundup. They saturate large crops. It gets into our food system. It gets into the meat that we eat and buy from the grocery store, and it's getting into the water supply. And it was approved just 2 years actually after DDT was taken off the market. And disease has gone up significantly actually since it's been put into mainstream agriculture. Studies have shown that it's probably more harmful even than DDT. And it's linked to diseases like autism, there's cancer. It's just it's really bad. And there's a lot of things that we need to be changing about our farming practices, and we are a long ways off. Fluoride is another big toxin. It's added to water supplies. It's linked to cancer, skeletal fluorosis, endocrine disorders, impaired fetal development, lower IQs in children. We're going to circle back to fluoride, but it's in a lot. You're going to see that toxin in a lot of even bottled waters. It's not just the water supply. Luckily, Nevada isn't too bad with that. PCBs, they're commonly found in the farm-raised fish. They can cause cancer, fetal brain development issues. The phthalates are endocrine disruptors. You're going to find those in a lot of your plastic products, including plastic wrap, Tupperware, plastic bottles, your refined vegetable oils and seed oils. And this one's kind of a tricky one because it's your corn oil, sunflower oil, safflower, soybean, cottonseed. They're basically empty calories, which means there's no nutrients in there at all. And there's such a high amount of omega-6 fats. And it's estimated that the average American gets 16 times more omega-6s than they really should be having. It creates a ton of inflammation, puts you at risk for heart disease and some cancers. Actually, multiple studies linked women with having the high omega-6s with an 87 to 92% chance of an increased risk for breast cancer. So this is kind of a sneaky one because, years ago, people were used to, there was a huge marketing campaign telling us to reduce using saturated fats for cooking and start cooking with these oils. And the worst part about it is cooking with these oils actually makes their damaging effects even more harmful. And these oils also tend to they go rancid very easily from just exposure to light and air. So really something that we want to try to avoid in our diet. And most of us have heard of this one, BPA. It's a chemical found in plastic containers, a lot of bottled water, packaged foods, a lot of our canned foods. It's even been found in fresh turkey and baby formula. This one is a huge hormonal disruptor. It causes lots of hormonal problems, disorders, cancers, infertility, diabetes, insulin resistance, even cancer risk for a developing fetus. So this is definitely, these are some of the top toxins that we're going to find in our food. So there are things to be aware of when we're shopping and buying food. We really have to watch the prepackaged food, and sometimes it's really for all of these toxic reasons that we really need to be careful about the food choices. Now, by no means is this an all-inclusive list of our toxins. These are some of the major ones and easily avoidable ones that I want you guys to be aware of because they can impact our health so significantly. All right, fat busters. Number 1, stay hydrated. Number 2, eat real food, mostly vegetables. 3, sleep. Sleep is one thing that I think gets overlooked a lot. And I will tell you that if you are trying to drop a few extra pounds and just get healthier and feel a little better, staying hydrated and getting enough sleep sometimes are the only 2 things you need to change. Especially I hear that when people are saying, I'm eating really good, I'm doing, really good, I'm working out. Oftentimes I'm seeing that there's definitely not enough water and not enough sleep in their daily routine. And then move at least 20 minutes per day. Now, moving, guys, I'm not talking go to the gym and lift like a meathead or run a marathon. Just move. If that's a walk after dinner, that's actually, it feels really good to go for a walk after dinner. It's just moving your body 20 minutes a day. And most of us probably do that anyway, but it's just something to be mindful of and be aware of. So let's go to the water. Why is drinking water so important? I actually could do an entire hour lecture on water. So I'm going to hit the key points, and you're going to hopefully get the takeaway of how important water is. So 1, if you think about it, your body is 75% water. So if we aren't hydrated and don't have a healthy balance of water, you're not going to be able to manage your weight, your metabolism, your appetite, even your energy. A lot of times when people are feeling super tired or that daytime fatigue, sometimes it's just mild dehydration. So definitely something to be aware of. Drinking adequate amounts of water definitely decreases risks of cancers like the colon, bladder, and breast cancer are kind of your main ones. It helps keep your system flushed out and working optimally. And that's really our main job, is to take care of these bodies that we were given. Drinking water, actually studies have proven that it reduces joint and back pain. Our gut health. Pretty much everything we're talking about today is about supporting our overall gut health. But this definitely, drinking water is a huge, huge piece of that because it's able to flush out the toxins and bacteria. Headaches are another big one, and mild dehydration can give people headaches. It doesn't have to be that bad. That's one thing that I think a lot of people forget about when they're like, man, I keep getting these headaches. Just one quick question is, how am I doing on my water? It does aid in digestion. It helps your body break down a lot of the foods, and it's your primary mode of transportation for all nutrients in the body. So these are pretty essential things. A 12-week study showed that participants that drank adequate amounts of water lost an average of 115% more body fat. That was the only difference in the groups of participants, that they changed the amounts of water. And one group, the group that had to regulate and make sure that they drank an adequate amount of water, lost 115% more body fat. And that's with identical food and identical amount of working. Actually, I think there was no working out allowed during this particular study. Okay, so hopefully I have your attention on water. So how much is an adequate amount of water? An ounce per pound of body weight a day. So if you have a 154-pound person, you have 154 ounces per day of water, or 1.2 gallons. So I gave you a couple of conversions there just to help make it simple. 128 ounces are in a gallon. So yes, as you lose weight, you don't have to drink as much. I definitely think you need to pay attention to your body signals as well, to make sure that you're getting enough water. I try to tell everyone, if you can drink at least half to 1 liter upon waking up. Like if that's the first thing you do for your body is really hydrate. I love lemon water. If it's just, if it's your plain water, that's okay. But it will actually set up your thirst hormones so you will easily drink the rest of the water your body needs throughout the rest of the day. You don't have to measure out your water. Some people do. Some people like to do that to make sure that they're getting in enough water. And then I also think you need to consider things like, this is an average person, what your needs are. If you are running a marathon, or you're doing a lot of work outside, or you're hanging out at the beach one day, especially here in Nevada, it gets so hot, you're going to lose a lot more water and probably going to need to increase that intake. If you're a weekend drinker and had a couple glasses of wine with dinner, that's also going to be something that will really dehydrate and throw off this fluid balance. So that's going to be another reason to drink maybe a little bit more water. So not all water is created equally, and this is so true. So this is just a quick little history on water. Fluoride was during World War II, fluoride started being added to our water supply because they believed that the places in the world that had higher natural fluoride, that those people there had better dental health. And so they assumed that, without doing any studies, that it was because of the higher fluoride levels in the water. Now, fluoride is not meant to be ingested. And after this actually started in Michigan, and many communities and states really started following suit. And right now, approximately 70% of the tap water in the US is fluorinated. So what does that mean? So the EPA estimates that the average American ingests at least 3 milligrams of fluoride per day. Many Americans drinking more than that. The problem with this is, if we go back to that 154-pound person, just 3.5 milligrams of fluoride will disrupt their thyroid function. And so you're talking 154 pounds person is just with the average intake of a normal American is potentially disrupting their thyroid function. That's seriously concerning. The CDC states that 40% of Americans have dental fluorosis. So if you have dental fluorosis, common sense tells us that we also have skeletal fluorosis. So we're going to see that with things like arthritis, chronic fatigue, muscle weakness, GI disorders, calcifications of tendons and ribs, and osteoporosis. So fluoride can actually be a pretty big deal. So got fluoride. A lot of these waters I just listed, I went off the most current list of bottled water that actually does put in fluoride into their water. And the tricky thing is, they don't have to label it as fluoride. They can label it as like natural flavors or electrolytes or something to enhance taste. The government's not really strict about this at this time. Now, I also have read a lot, like every year when I change and update this lecture, fluoride is one. I'll update this list. This list is always changing. So I've seen different brands move on and off this list. But remember, a lot of these come in plastic water bottles anyway, and that's definitely something that most of us are going to try to start avoiding. So if you guys watched our last lecture on superfoods, those are wonderful, and that lecture was wonderful. So I'm not going to hit this section too hard, but there is some things that I really wanted to cover with you guys. Some things that are going to be pretty important to make sure you have in your diet. So spirulina, at this time, it is the single most nutrient-dense food on the planet. It is a bacteria. It's like from the sea. It's a blue-green algae. And just 1 tablespoon of this powder, like in a smoothie or something, has It's a complete amino profile, has 4 grams of protein, but it has so many of your B vitamins and your copper and iron and magnesium, manganese and potassium. Even small amounts of this, if you could get a little bit in your diet every day, are absolutely huge. And really, I think a lot of people start feeling the benefits of spirulina. They tend to notice a little bit more energy. So that's one of the big superfoods that I like to see people adding in their diet. Sprouts is another one that gets overlooked, I think, quite a bit, actually. So sprouts, I call these a nutrition powerhouse because they're so concentrated with nutritional benefits compared to eating like just the bigger mature vegetables. So they're oxygen dense, they protect the body from bacteria. They're really high in fiber, so they help the body with fat loss because it binds to the fat and the toxins and helps remove them from the body. It's got your A, B, C, and E vitamins and essential fatty acid nutrients that increase it in sprouting minerals to bind to protein. They make it more easily absorbed. It's very alkalizing for the body, so it definitely helps protect us from cancer and fight against the free radicals. And it has a lot of other micronutrients as well. So sprouts, they're so yummy. And if you don't like them, you can blend them in smoothies, you can put them in salads, you can put them in sautés and on a sandwich. I just absolutely love these guys. Coconut kefir is another one. Now, notice I didn't say milk, and we will talk about that a little later, but your coconut kefir is definitely one of the most rich probiotic foods on the planet. It has a lot of healing benefits that help restore leaky gut and aid in digestion. So this is one of those things that if you are having a lot of food sensitivities, a lot of inflammation in your diet, there's a lot of indicators pointing to leaky gut. And so we're going to want to introduce this into your diet to help start repairing that system. Food allergies also, this is, or allergies in general, I'm sorry. So like seasonal allergies and stuff, having this in your diet, especially during the spring and fall when allergies are at their worst with all the things blowing around in the air. This is a huge, huge thing to consider keeping in your diet on a daily basis during those times. It does help fight against asthma and carcinogens, helps build your immune system, and it's got lots of yummy vitamins, enzymes, and probiotics, of course. Okay, just a couple more to go. Kale. Kale, this green beats out all the others in terms of nutrition, providing more antioxidants than most other fruits or veggies. And it's a great source of calcium, iron, your vitamins C, A, and K1, B6, potassium, calcium, magnesium, copper, manganese. It's got all the yummy stuff to help fight cancer. Now, spinach is a close second. The reason I picked kale was because it's lower in oxalates. And oxalates are a substance that will bind to minerals like your calcium. And it will do that like in your intestines, and it will prevent you from being absorbed. So kale kind of trumps the list on this guy, for this list anyway. Seaweed, so similar to spirulina, but this is more like nori or kelp. It is more nutritious than most of the land vegetables. It has a lot more minerals and antioxidant compounds in them. They're really anti-inflammatory and also high in iodine, which is really big for like preventing thyroid disorders. So your garlic, green tea, chia seeds, and wild blueberries definitely have to make the list. I'm a huge fan of all of those. And these are really just some of the key things. Like if you can get a lot of these in your main diet, you're doing really good and on your way to feeling a lot better. I have hemp seeds, maca root, quinoa, and almonds. I'm not going to drag you through each of these. Hemp seeds are really good, and even the maca root, if you're leaning towards more of a vegan diet, which you'll hear us talk about sometimes in the office. And hemp seeds and your quinoa are going to be pretty essential in addition to your spirulina to make sure that you're getting like your complete amino profile, you're getting all the amino acids that you need and getting in some good proteins, and almonds too, of course. We all love our almonds, don't we? Okay, guys, the incredible edible egg. I love you all, so please don't hate me after this part of the lecture. All right, so our eggs. Eggs are tricky. You see all sorts of labels on eggs, like farm fresh, cage free, all natural. Even our like organic label on eggs can be very misleading. There is a place called the Cornucopia Institute, and they spent 2 years researching and visiting over, I think, over 15% of the certified organic farms in the United States. They surveyed all the name brand and a lot of the private labeled industry marketers. And the reports were huge, basically saying that the standards followed by the industrial large-scale operations were pretty sad. And so they came out with a new label, actually. I'll show you that in a few minutes. One thing to look for if you are buying eggs from the grocery store. But according to the Cornucopia Institute, imagine 80,000 laying hens in a single building, crowded in confinement conditions on farms with hundreds of thousands or possibly even 1 million birds. How is this organic? And how about a tiny enclosed concrete porch accessible by only 3.5 to 5% of the tens of thousands of birds in the hen house? So how does that pass as outdoor access as required by federal organic law? It's absolutely insane. So these industrial scale egg producers that produce organic eggs, they're in huge factory farms, and they crowd tens of thousands of chickens into this 2-story building, and they have a small little porch access, and that's what they see as their outdoor access. You'll even see some of the farmers get like a note from the vet that says, please don't let your birds outside. It may be hazardous to their health. It's like, so then they're allowed to pass and keep up these farming practices, which is just totally unethical and really not right. So let's talk about the labels again that you're going to see. I see a lot of people, or I've had a lot of people ask me about the omega-3 eggs. So all of these birds, just keep in mind, cage-free, free-range omega-3. All of these birds can still be given antibiotic, animal byproducts, which means sometimes when they lose some of the chickens and they die, they are processed and fed back to the other chickens. And they're also they're given feed from GMO crops, which we will talk about a little bit more coming up here. They may live in overcrowded conditions and may or may not have access to nests and perches. Your certified organic eggs do come from antibiotic and hormone-free eggs, which is good, that have supposed access to outdoor areas, but that's like the little concrete porch, like the picture we saw before. And it's really, that's their outdoor access. And that your pasture-raised eggs, which are supposed to be true free-range eggs and hens, they're supposed to be more nutritious, but it's pasture-raised is just a term that people started throwing on egg cartons. It's unregulated and there's no uniform standards for that. So as much as some of the farms that do label that and do practice that way. It's really tricky because that's it's a term that's unregulated. So I left the website if anyone's interested in learning more about eggs. If you can get eggs from someone you know, or if you have a farm yourself, that's obviously always going to be the best source of eggs. If you do buy it in the grocery store, this is the label you're looking for. It's not really this big, it's much smaller, and it's in a tiny little corner somewhere, but you want to know that it's certified humane. That's how you're going to know that you're getting your eggs from at least a credible source. So we're going to move on, and we're going to talk about protein. So our number one recommended protein is going to be your plant proteins. So that includes the hemp, quinoa, beans, rice, peas, our sprouts, don't forget those, nuts and seeds. Many animal proteins are high in saturated fat, which raises our cholesterol and increases our risk for coronary heart disease, cancer, and other diseases. However, that being said, there's a lot of people who are not in a position to go plant-based right away. Some people don't even feel very good not having the animal protein in their diet. So our recommendation definitely isn't to pull all of the animal protein out if it makes you feel bad. If that's something that you can do, for me, becoming a vegan was a huge part of my healing process. But not everybody's body is the same. And I think that it's important to commit to what's going to be right for your body and how you feel. And you really need to listen to that. And two, it's making a commitment to something that's totally doable. If you're like, okay, I'm gung-ho, I'm going to go all plant-based, but I've never really eaten this way and I have no idea what I'm doing, and 3 days in I'm starving and I binge on everything in my pantry, that's not really setting yourself up for success either. So if you are going to keep animal proteins in, we definitely suggest lean proteins, so your fish, lean cuts of grass-fed meat and wild game. And those are actually second. Your white meat from chicken and turkey would be third. And that is, there's a lot of research and studies coming out showing how contaminated the chicken and turkey can be for our bodies. So also, and the key thing is avoiding processed meats. Processed meats are so carcinogenic. They're actually worse than smoking a pack of cigarettes. So your sausage, your turkey sausage or bacon, all of this stuff, the salami, hot dogs, lunch meat, it's definitely important to be aware of your sources and just trying to get it as natural and fresh and whole as possible. The importance of eating organic. Nutritional intake has changed more in the United States in the last 40 years than the last 40,000 years. And I think that statement is huge. And that mostly refers to all of the pesticides, the herbicides, the GMOs that we're starting to do. We are changing our food source. We're ruining our soil. We're ruining our quality of water. And it's really changing the quality of our food. And it's very concerning. Heart disease, cancer, obesity, diabetes, they're all responsible for the majority of the deaths and morbidity in the United States of America. There is not one doctor that will disagree with that statement. And, obviously a lot of the literature suggests that our diet is the main factor to disease, which most of us, I think that's pretty clear. So herbicides and pesticides are very toxic and linked to tumors and cancers. They create reproductive damage and lots of other diseases. The conventionally raised livestock are fed a lot of GMO corn and soy, not to mention the feed is laced with hormones and antibiotics that's done because they've shown that the low dose of antibiotics and hormones can actually make the livestock gain weight faster. And so even when you're looking at like grass-fed meat in the stores, it can be grass-fed. The regulations on that are it can be grass-fed for most of its life and then sent to a feedlot to fatten up, where they pump it full of GMO GMO feed, hormones, and antibiotics. So it could take this, great clean source and ruin it at the end, and they're advertising it as such. So grass-fed is important, but you want grass finished as well, and organic, because that will mean that the feed that they were given does not have GMO corn and soy, hormones or antibiotics. And really that's the label under organic. That's one of the big things. You're going to know that it doesn't have any of that garbage. And you have to remember that a lot of these toxins are stored in the fat. So it goes into the meat fat, which is why we recommend, if you're going to eat steak or animal proteins, that you get the leaner cuts of meat, so you're getting less of these toxins. And you have to remember too, even our organically raised livestock, grass-fed and finished, are still living in a world with contaminated rainfall and soil, and they're still not getting the ideal diet really for them and for us, if that's going to be our food. So also the growth hormone, we see this a lot on the milk. The RBGH is given to dairy cows to increase their milk production. These hormones and antibiotics make their way into our food supply, into our bodies. And actually this year they finished the study. The average age of a little girl starting her period is 8.5 years old. And that is directly, they believe, linked to the increase of this growth hormone being put into our milk supplies. So if you think that that's and are aware that that's in our milk supplies, and then you talk about yogurt, that's a more concentrated form of milk, or cheese, which is even more concentrated. So yogurts and cheeses, your ice creams, all that stuff, that's where a lot of these hormones are going to be, which disrupt our kids today. It's changing so much of our health in our nation. It's really important for us to start being aware and hopefully starting to make some changes. Genetic engineering alters crops to make them weather and pest resistant. GMO corn, for example, was combined with bacteria in order to produce its own insecticide called BT toxin. BT toxin kills insects by destroying the lining of their digestive tracts. The poison isn't specific to insects. It also pokes holes in human cells, so damaging intestines and causing leaky gut syndrome. So that's one of the big things. Corn is a huge one, because we're going to get to corn specifically pretty shortly here. But corn, because they have put in this BT toxin to kill all the bugs and keep it off, they don't have to spray it with pesticides and herbicides. It's actually makes it onto our Clean 15 list, but it is also one of the highest GMO foods in our nation. And I think it's really, so I have it on the list because I'm giving you the information that they've given and put out. But corn is one of those big things that I would also highly recommend being organic. This YouTube video is awesome. We don't have time for it today. It's only like 3 minutes though, if you guys want to take a quick screenshot of it. It just talks about some of the GMO foods. There's a movie also called Seeds of Death. They talk about some of the tumors and cancers that everyone is very well aware of that these foods cause, and it's still in our mainstream food system, which is pretty concerning. So we're going to move on to leaky gut syndrome, which, remember, the Bt toxin in lots of different foods, beans, corn, grains. You see it everywhere. It's made to destroy the gut lining of these insects that eat it. And it also does the same thing to us. Other things in addition to GMO foods are your pain medications, antibiotics, acidic beverages. So that's even some of your bottled water like Dasani is still pretty acidic. But your sodas and your sugary fizzy drinks are definitely pretty acidic, and alcohol. So it starts destroying and poking holes in the lining of our gut, which starts leading to, we see that autoimmune disease, arthritis, allergies, cancer, Crohn's, IBS, tons of gut problems, heart disease, Alzheimer's, and diabetes. And then with these autoimmune disorders, it's pain and inflammation. And it is really a vicious cycle. The more GMO foods we eat, the more alcohol we introduce. If we need to take pain medicine from the pain and inflammation, or we're getting sick because of our weakened immune system and taking antibiotics, it really is self-perpetuating. So where are we at today in 2020? The EWG is, we just talked about them. They release their Dirty Dozen list every spring. And even this year, really honestly, the list they put out for Dirty Dozen, it really hasn't changed much in the last 5 years. It looks really similar. You'll see one or two switch places, or one drop off and then one new one pop back on, but it's kind of the same foods every time, every year. Almost 70% of non-organic foods sampled test positive for pesticide contamination. And so that's what's tricky when you eat conventional food, and eating organic is expensive. Trust me, I know. I've been doing this and committed to this lifestyle for a long time. And that's why I think they came out with the Dirty Dozen. Those are the 12 worst foods you could possibly eat conventional because of the amount of contamination that they harbor. And then there's also a clean 15. And I definitely always refer to those because it really helps the pocketbook. But the number one on the list for the last, I want to say 3 years. Oh, no, I'm sorry, the last 5 years has been the strawberry. Strawberry's been number one, and it has, this year in 2020, is showed to have more than 22 different pesticide or pesticide residues on a berry, a single berry. Man, and I see these out at like kid birthday parties, and it just makes me cringe. And I'm like, can I just bring the berries? I'll bring organic berries for all the kids, because I don't want them eating that. It's like we're destroying their little tummies so early. Spinach is another big one. Spinach, we talked about that already. It's back to having a lot of the DDT, that illegal compound, in over 40% of the non-organic samples that they were looking at. So that's also highly concerning, because that shouldn't even be on any of our food in the United States. So the EWG, they break down and analyze, they test so much food, and they test for 230 different pesticide breakdowns. So they're pretty amazing. So here's their Dirty Dozen list. Again, this is a good time for, we'll send out the slides for you, I'm pretty sure. But take a snapshot of this guy. This is the 2020 Dirty Dozen list. Again, strawberries and spinach, like I talked about. Kale's also up there. That's a really big one. Your nectarines, apples, grapes, peaches, cherries, pears, tomatoes, celery, and potatoes. Now, one thing I want you to consider is they are specifically looking at pesticides and herbicides and pesticide residues. They're not looking at GMO, the genetically modified organisms. So as you'll see, and they only look also, they only look at raw, like fruits and vegetables. They're not looking at processed foods. They're trying to get to the source of Like, what is contaminated? What do we watch? Now, one thing that is really good to look and consider when you're looking at these is a lot of these they've got a thin skin. They're going to be able to absorb those pesticides or residues, or like strawberries, they're going to be tough to really wash those well. But apples have a tougher skin, and a lot of people will say, oh, apples are fine. Apples are covered in pesticides. So here's our clean 15 list. Avocados are great. That outer skin really protects them pretty well. Your sweet corn, like I said, that's going to hit on this list. It's number 2 for being so clean. However, keep in mind that it's GMO, and there's still Bt toxin coming into your body to destroy your gut lining. But the rest I really like: pineapple, onion, papaya, your frozen sweet peas, eggplants, asparagus, cauliflower, cantaloupe, broccoli, mushrooms, cabbage, honeydew melon, and your kiwi. So all of those, if you're budgeting, all of those are totally safe to buy conventional, so you don't have to really put too much concern into these vegetables. Oh, there's my boys. I always sneak them into every lecture. Hormones. All right. This affects men and women, but we're running kind of short on time, so we're just going to scratch the surface on hormones today. If hormones is something you guys would love to hear more about, we can just let us know. We're going to do a little poll at the end, but make a note in there that you'd like to hear about this, because we can break it down into much more detail on how to actually eat to create hormone balance. But some of the key things to remember are: you are what you eat. And that goes back to all the toxins, pesticides, GMO foods. You are what you ate. So if you are eating animal proteins, remember that you can be doing everything else good and clean and organic. And if you're buying meat that has been fed GMO feed and given antibiotics, you're still going to be creating disruptions in your own hormone system. There's a hormone called ghrelin, and this actually regulates our hunger, like how much, a lot of times it disrupts us and makes us feel more hungry. And it's also the hormone that can contribute to abdominal fat, or one of the hormones, I should say, that contributes to abdominal fat. The food we eat directly controls our hormones, insulin, and blood sugar levels. So are you hungry all the time? A few different factors could be thirst, your ghrelin, low blood sugar. I'm going to pick up the pace here, guys, because I want to be able to get to your questions a little. So if I'm going a little fast, I want you to know why I'd rather get to your questions. But for example, with the low blood sugar, if you're going to eat a blueberry muffin, something that's high in sugar, your body's going to secrete insulin to control that blood sugar and bring you back to homeostasis. But it is also, just because your blood sugar has spiked and dropped back down, then your body's going to signal, hey, we're hungry, we're ready to, have more food, when actually you've had probably more than enough calories. But you'll notice that when you do have those more sugary foods, that you'll feel more hungry. So that's definitely something to consider. Subliminal messages, I forget what the ratio was, but there's something like in watching television for 1 hour, you get like 80,000 subliminal messages for eating bad food. It's something absolutely ridiculous. And then salt, sugar, and fat. So there's actually a salt, sugar, fat ratio that scientists have figured out to help keep you addicted to food. So Doritos, for say, is a savory food, and there is a very specific sugar, fat, and salt ratio to keep savory foods addictive, to where what is it they say, you can't just eat one. Maybe that's a different chip. But same with sugary foods. like if you're going to eat a big chocolate cake, there's a sugar, fat, salt ratio to help keep you craving more. And another thing to think about too is hunger is not an emergency. Listen to your body, but listen to understand what it's telling you. Are you hungry right now? And respond intelligently. Ways to control ghrelin. This is, remember, the hormone that makes us feel really hungry. No crash dieting, eating foods with lots of fiber, proteins and fats with your meals will help your meal digest slower and leave your stomach feeling full longer, and avoiding fructose and processed foods and drinks. So some tips and tricks is always to bring your own food with you, even if you're going to a potluck. And like I'm a vegan. If I go to potlucks and stuff all the time, I'm gonna bring a really awesome apple broccoli salad that everyone loves, and it's something that I can definitely eat too. That way I'm still contributing, but I know for sure that I'm at least going to have one salad that has a lot of the things that I'm going to need to eat in it for the night. Start slowly. This is not something that you're going to have to be like, oh great, I have to throw away all the food in my house. She's just ruined my whole week. I don't know what to eat, and all my food's garbage. Just small goals, small attainable goals is what's going to help make this a whole lifestyle change, because remember, this isn't a quick fix. This is a journey. Tips and tricks also to control the hunger is not skipping meals. Even if that's an apple and a couple of almonds, if you can get some food in you, and not skipping and going the long periods really can help. And treat meals. A lot of people, we can talk about that more in another, like, more in-depth lecture, but treat meals, that's one thing where people are like, oh, I've been doing so good, now I want a cheat meal and I'm going to have pizza and chocolate chip cookies and brownies today. And a lot of times that disrupts your whole hormone state, and a lot of people just slide backwards. So also mental state. There were a lot of studies on gratitude that just blow your mind, that if you can sit down in a really good state of mind, offer gratitude for your meal before you eat, that the amount of weight loss or decreased damage from food that it can create in the body, inflammation goes down. The studies just blow my mind, actually. These are jackfruit tacos. Forks Over Knives is an app you can get on your phone. There's a movie and cookbooks and a book about this. They have all sorts of yummy recipes. So we're going to have to skip probably the last few slides. A lot of this is repeated information. Troubleshooting your fat loss. It's your hormones, hunger, food intolerance and inflammation, and microbiome. We're going to hit your food intolerances really quick though. These are your top 7 culprits in our diet that create a lot of havoc. Dairy, gluten, soy, eggs, corn, peanuts, and number 7 is sugar and artificial sweeteners. Those both go together. Now, here's the big thing. When you're like, oh geez, there's 7 things, I'm not going to cut them all out, or the easiest way to tell which one of these is affecting you the most is if you're like, oh, okay, I could get rid of number 2 through 7, but there's no way I'm giving up my yogurt. I can promise you that your food intolerance is that yogurt. Our microbiome, the way that it works is that bad bacteria has started to outnumber the good bacteria, and it's going to keep you craving that cheese or that yogurt, or your eggs or whatever that is. So if there's one thing on this list that you absolutely refuse and will not give up, unfortunately, sorry, that's probably your number 1 food intolerance. Sugar, we all know sugar is really bad. It's more addictive than cocaine. And it's really sneaky how they label it on packaged food, which is, again, another reason why we need to really be cautious with packaged food. These are all of our sugar-related diseases, same as our fat-related diseases mostly. So take charge of your health, stay hydrated, eat mostly plants, nutrient-dense foods, organic and non-GMO. All right, you guys, we did it. We got through our lecture. So let's see if I can stop our screen share and I can come back to you guys. And I'm going to pop up our question and answer. So if you guys have any questions, definitely put them in now. Our first question: does Truckee Meadows Water Authority add fluoride to Reno's water in town? And the awesome answer to that is no. Although TMWA still has a lot of problems with our water, arsenic definitely being one of them. Prescription drugs, surprisingly, is another one, which is kind of crazy. Don't know what it is with Reno, but so there's other things in our water supply, but there have been a lot of really cool people fighting to keep the fluoride out of our water system, which is wonderful. And is drinking distilled water okay as a main source of water when one travels a lot? Yes, it is. However, sometimes you might be not getting some of the minerals and good things that you do get from water. So if you're going to be drinking that, that's fine. I would consider bringing along some sort of the like powdered electrolytes or something that's an organic version. They make lots of those out there. If you want to ask me if I see you in the clinic, I don't have names on the questions. So, but yeah, I'd be happy to show you some of the ones I recommend to you. So is that about all we have? Is there any more questions from anyone? Anything you guys want me to address before we get out of here today? Okay, well, that's good. I went really fast, so I hope I didn't overwhelm any of you, and I hope you found that information helpful. We are going to, a poll should be popping up at the end of this lecture, so you guys can let us know what you'd like to hear more of in the future. There's lots of different topics we can address with this that we would love to answer for you. And thank you so much.